All right, pre-algebra kids, what we've been doing so far is just straight out solving percent problems when I give you the percent and telling you how to calculate it. So now we need to move on into what happens when we're missing one of the other numbers. All right? And here's what it boils down to, are these two words, is and of. These are the critical ones. And I want you to get used to translating this now whenever you see problems, translating the words into algebra. That's your job. The word is will translate into the equal sign. That's where you're going to put it. Whenever you see the word is, think that's where your equal sign goes. Then that's going to create an equation, and you need to solve for whatever is missing. When you see the word of, I want you to think of that being a multiplication sign. And since we're leading into algebra now, we tend not to use that times symbol that way because that could confuse it with the variable x, so we're just going to think of using the dot for multiplication there. Now the types of problems you've been doing so far look like this first one. What is 42% of 283? What I want you to do is tackle this in an algebraic way now, meaning I want you to think, what is, all right, well, the word is, I just said, translates into your equal sign. This is the unknown. You can choose whatever letter you want to there, like n for the number. What number is 42% of 283? So 42%, you grab a calculator, because even I would not do this by hand, and you can either use the percent function key that's on your calculator or change it into the decimal. Of is multiply, and then 283. So this is the type of problem that you've been doing all along. And you know, before you even grab that calculator, I want you to think about what your answer should look like. 42% is getting close to halfway. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, half of this would be around 140 something, and this is going to be less than that. So my answer is going to more than likely be in the hundreds, but definitely less than 140. And when you calculate this out, sure enough, you get 118 and 86 hundredths. And if it gives you no instruction for rounding, leave it just as is. Okay, leave it just as is. But now we're getting into problems that look more like this. What percent of 250 is 12.5? Translate this. What percent? That's your unknown. Pick a variable. I'm going to use p, so it reminds me that's percent. Of means multiply. What percent of or times 250 is, there's your equal sign, 12.5. Now, think about this. I'm starting with a number 250. I'm applying a percent to it. I get something pretty small. I'm thinking my percentage number is going to be pretty small as well. You know, if I did 50% of 250, I know that would give me 125. So this is going to be way smaller than that. Algebraically, in order to solve for your unknown, you're going to undo the math that's happening to your variable. In other words, divide by 250. 250 over 250 is 1, and p times 1 is just p. Now, when you grab your calculator and divide these two, you actually get this decimal, 0.05. But this is in decimal format. It's not written as a percent yet. You need to convert this from the decimal to the percent, which means you move the decimal point over twice, or you multiply by 100, and now I can use the symbol, 5%. Whenever I do these, I go back and check. Check, 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 check. Does my answer make sense? What's 5% of 250? Crank that out. Do you get 12.5? Yes, you do. So your answer was correct. Here's another way to logically think of this. If I did 10%, remember how we talked about the 10% method, or the quick way of looking at 10% of something? 10% of 250 would simply be 25. Half of 10% is 5%. Half of 25 is 12.5. Well, there you go. That makes sense. So if you're looking for the percent, write that as a variable, and remember, you're going to get a decimal answer that you will need to convert back into percent. The other situation is when you have 40% of what number. You have the percent, you don't know what the number is, but you get the final answer. So I'm saying 40% of translates into multiplication. What number? I don't know. Pick a variable. Is comes next. That's your equal sign. 69 and 2/10 is the value over here. You want to figure out what number this should be, which means you need to isolate this variable. Algebraically, what you're going to do is divide by 40%. 40% is simply written as a number 0.40 as a decimal. Crank that out on your calculator, knowing that 69.2, and then you divide it by 0.40, 69.2, and divide. And I get this number. I get that n is 173. Ask yourself, does that make sense? Is 40% of 173, should that be around 69 or 70? Well, think, half of this would be, I don't know, 85, 86, 87, somewhere in that ballpark. 40% is a little less than that, so I should get something a little less than 80 something, which is 69.2. It seems to be in the ballpark. 40% of 173, when you crank that out, you do in fact get 69 and 2/10. Done. It does check out. So now, I've given you a worksheet, and what I want you to do is every single time, first of all, translate it algebraically. What is, there's your equal sign. What? I don't know. Put a variable there. 79% of means multiply. All right, this one is straight out multiplication. Figure out your answer. But when you look at number 3, what percent, okay, so I don't know the percent, of 153 is, that's your equal sign, 120. The first thing I want you to do is translate this algebraically, then work at solving or isolating the variable, 153. Divide both sides by 153. That gives you p times 1, which is just p. When you come over here and take 120 divided by 153, I get some nasty old decimal here. Okay? So I'm going to right away write this 0.7843137, and this number is going on a ways. Eventually, because this came from a fraction, this is a rational number, it will eventually repeat somehow, some way along there, or stop, but I don't know where that is right now. First of all, I want you to think of this. I'm asking for the percent. This is the decimal equivalent. So to translate this into percent notation, you need to multiply by 100, which means move the decimal point 2 places over. So now I get 78.43137, and so on. I'm going to say if you round it off to the 10th place, that's good enough for me. Okay? But I would still go back and take your calculator and double check. Take 78.4% times 153. Now keep in mind, we rounded this number, so I'm not going to expect I get exactly 120, but I should be pretty stinking close. And when you do, I get 119.952. Yep, that's close. So go ahead and leave your answer that way. All right, look at, I'm trying to think where's, all right, here's a good one. Number 5, 8% of what number is 122? 8% of means times. What number? I don't know. Is equal sign 122. Algebraically, you have it set up. Here's your variable. Isolate your variable by undoing multiplying by 8%. In other words, divide by 8%, because this value divided by this value is 1. 1 times n is n. Then come on over here and take 102 divided by that 8%, which is the same as the decimal 0.08. When you get your answer, it's a pretty big one, 1,525. I would double check that. Take 8% times 1,525 and verify that's your answer. There you go. Go ahead and continue on your assignment now that you've gotten things set up, and we'll check it when you're done.